I never expected the person who walked me down the aisle to be someone my family never imagined. But that's exactly what happened. They laughed at me, mocked me, called me too plain, too quiet, too average. And then, on my wedding day, the surprise I'd planned with his family flipped their world upside down. Let's go back. I met Daniel 5 years ago. He was standing in line at a bookstore, 2 carts full of fantasy novels, pockets stuffed with bookmarks. I was buying supplies for my graphic design client. We struck up a conversation about art direction, and I thought, he's smart. He gets it. Our first date was coffee. Our second was foraging for wildflowers. Our third, I realized I almost canceled my dinner with my cousin Sophie because I wanted to see him again. That's when I knew. My family, though, they never quite got him. My mother, he's nice, but where's the ambition? My dad, he's okay, I guess, but does he make enough? My sister, he's so nerdy, and you're so company wife material. What happens when you get bored? I tried to shrug it off, because none of it mattered. Not when, one evening, he reached out to touch my hand in the car, and I felt electricity I'd never felt before. Not when he laughed at my stupid jokes. Not when he listened, really listened, like he was sketching me in his mind. The engagement party came. I walked in, glowing, clutching his arm. My Aunt Barbara greeted me with, "So, what exactly does he do again?" My sister rolled her eyes when I said he was planning to launch an ethical investment fund. She whispered, "That's just a fancy way to pretend you're important." My mother raised an eyebrow and said, "Is he serious about that career?" I felt it all. Every question. Every half-smile. Every side-eye. My dress fitting was the first time I sat in front of the mirror and thought, maybe I'm doing this alone. I tried on lace. I tried on silk. I tried on chiffon. But none of it made me feel real. And as I stood there in white tulle, I wondered if I was really enough. The rehearsal dinner. My family showed up late. Dad poured wine, leaned in, said loudly, "Let's hope she knows what she's doing." Sophie told guests, "Don't worry, he's got a prenup to protect her in case she gets bored." I barely ate. My cheeks burned, but I kept smiling, because I knew something they didn't. Something I had planned with his family. The night before the wedding, I lay awake in that guest room at my parents' house. The walls seemed too quiet, and I could hear their voices tucked in the hallway. "She's marrying a dreamer. He doesn't make real money yet. What if she regrets it?" I wanted to leave, but I'd signed a vow, and I believed. Fast forward. The morning of the wedding, blue sky, soft. Daniel and I said our vows under a willow tree. He looked at me with tears threatening. I whispered, "You don't have to pretend with me." He squeezed my hand. Then, halfway through, for better or worse, I saw my mother tear up. I caught her eye. She didn't know, but she sensed something shifting. The ceremony ended. My family applauded. They hugged me, but the tightness didn't leave their eyes. Even at the reception, where I danced with my father and smiled at Sophie's whispered, "Finally!" Then came the moment. Dinner ended. The lights dimmed. The DJ announced, "Now, a surprise for the bride and groom." My heart stuttered, because I'd arranged it with Daniel's grandmother, his aunts, even his cousins. They brought what looked like a small wooden box wrapped in satin. I knew what it was. My stomach caught. She placed it at our table, opened it slowly. Inside, handwritten letters. From all of them. Letters about how they met Daniel, how they saw him light up around me. Letters about how they'd watched me become part of their family. Love notes, acceptance notes, authentic warmth, real words. Then Daniel stood. He tapped his glass. "My parents and I wanted to show you all something." He nodded at his grandmother. She stood and beckoned the DJ. A chair was pulled in, and she began to read one letter aloud. About the first time she met me, how she saw his eyes glow when I laughed. And then another. From his aunt, from his cousin, each one building like a wave, and I could feel my heart swell, because this was my family now. They finished. The room was silent. My mother's face changed. The tightness melted. The walls crumbled. She stood and raised her glass. To me, not the daughter they thought they knew, but the woman they'd just discovered. By the time the last dance started, I wasn't just glowing from the wine or the music. I was glowing because something fundamental had shifted. Not in the world, but in me. And that shift? It felt permanent. We slow danced under the string lights, Daniel's hands on my waist, his forehead resting against mine. And in that moment, I thought, I'll remember this forever. Not just the way it looked, but the way it felt to be loved. Openly, fiercely, and without question. For the first time in years, I felt home. After midnight, the crowd thinned out. People kissed our cheeks, hugged us, whispered words I never thought I'd hear from my own family. You're radiant. He's lucky. You've grown into someone I admire. Each compliment felt like undoing a knot I'd carried for years. My dad approached as the cleanup began. He stood there, awkward, hands stuffed in his suit pockets. I didn't think it would be like this, he admitted. I thought he was small. I said nothing. He went on. But tonight I realized, you two amplify each other. Still, I stayed quiet, until he finally said the one thing I'd wanted to hear since I was 12. I'm proud of you. I looked him in the eyes. I know. And then, for once, I let him sit in the silence. Daniel and I snuck away to the bridal suite. I pulled off my shoes. He loosened his tie. We sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted and euphoric. You okay? He asked. I turned to him. You know what the best part was? He waited. I didn't have to prove anything tonight. Not really. I just had to show up as me. He smiled, leaned in and said, You always were enough. They just had to catch up. I kissed him. And in that kiss, I let go of every whispered doubt, every eye roll, every wedding planning jab, every smirk about our finances. Every time they said, Are you sure? Like I hadn't thought this through. I let it all melt. Because I knew, we knew, this wasn't a gamble. It was a foundation, and it was built to last. Months passed. We honeymooned somewhere quiet. No cell reception, just hikes and books and barefoot evenings. When we returned, something remarkable happened. My mom started calling just to talk, not to advise, not to correct, just to talk. My dad mailed us a bottle of champagne with a card that read, For your first big win together. And my sister? She invited us to her daughter's dance recital. First time in years, she asked me to come support her. Because somehow, after years of seeing me as the safe one, the quiet one, the one who never surprises anyone, they finally saw me as something else. As whole. A few weeks later, we had dinner with Daniel's family. His father handed me a portfolio binder. I looked at the cover and felt a sharp breath leave my chest. It was labeled, Co-Director Proposal, Ethical Expansion Fund. What is this? I asked. He smiled. I want you on the board. But I'm not a financial analyst. No, he said. You're better. You're a strategist. You listen, you anticipate, and you don't blink under pressure. I watched you turn a family against its assumptions. That's what leadership looks like. I blinked. Daniel nudged me. You're ready. And for the first time in my life, I agreed. I was. So I said yes. We launched a microloan initiative together for young women, especially in underrepresented communities. The same women who, like me, were told to stay small, to marry safe, to pick a job over a purpose. And we showed them, you don't have to choose. You can love deeply and lead fiercely. You can build legacies and write poetry. You can sit at the head of the table without raising your voice. You can be quiet and still change everything. I printed the first check we issued from the fund, framed it in my home office. Above it I placed a photo, one taken at the wedding. Me, mid-laugh, Daniel's arms around me, my sister and parents in the background, watching, smiling, seeing. I hung it not because I needed to remember them, but because I wanted to remember me. Who I was, what I fought through, and who I chose to become in spite of it. Sometimes, people ask me what it felt like to be mocked by my own family, to be told my relationship wasn't enough, to be made to question my choices when I was supposed to be celebrated. And I tell them this: it hurt. It made me wonder if I was broken, if I was missing something obvious that everyone else could see. But then I met a man who didn't need to fix me. He just held the mirror steady, so I could see myself fully, clearly, without distortion, and once I saw that woman, I never looked back. The bracelet Daniel's father gave me? I wear it often, not because it's flashy, but because it reminds me, anchor and flame, strong enough to stay rooted, brave enough to burn brighter. That's what I became. Not just a bride, not just a wife, not just a daughter, but me. Unapologetic, unfolded, undeniably whole. Subscribe for more dark, faceless storytelling. And tell me, when they underestimated you, how did you rise?